Tyler from Country Living Experience. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to make some bread, but we're going to start with what's called a sponge. Here on the Homestead, you have to learn how to make things yourself. And yes, bread is cheap at the store, but this is, there's nothing that tastes like fresh, warm, homemade bread. It's just absolutely wonderful. So this is one of my favorite recipes. I've done a lot of testing over time, and this tastes like some bread that I had from a kid. When I was a kid, from a couple of bakeries near me. So what a sponge is a starter to a bread. It's called a pre-ferment. There's several different pre-ferments, but one type is a sponge. I find it's the easiest to make. It has a really soft consistency, and it's like pancake batter. And you whisk it all together. What you do is you take roughly 30 to 50% of the flour and about half the yeast, maybe a little less, and then all of the liquid. And then you cover it up in there, and it gives the bread a lot of flavor, which is really wonderful. Usually I let the sponge go for between an hour to 4 hours. I know this is a big wide range of time, but you know, it depends on how quickly you need to make it. It also develops more flavor as you give it more hours to ferment. So let's go ahead and start to do that. It's a basic white bread recipe. We've got what we're going to start with. Well, I like to be very organized. So as you can see, everything is laid out here ahead of time on the counter, and there's two types of yeast that I use. This Red Star Platinum is very nice, and the Flieschmanns dry active yeast. But either one works well, and what you want to use is this dry active yeast. Okay, what you want to do is you want to start the yeast and get it going, get it woken up. What we're going to do here is we're going to just open up the yeast and pour, like I said, about a half of the packet in here, maybe a little bit less than half the packet. So reserving that over there, maybe a little bit more. Okay. Now, most recipes call for white sugar, 2 tablespoons. I like to use something a little bit more natural, unrefined, which is honey. And as you can see, this honey, let's check this out, started to crystallize. A lot of honeys do that. Nothing wrong with it. All I did was put it in a pan of warm water to get it to become liquid again. Don't put it in too high heat water, because you'll kill all the good enzymes and bacteria that are in the honey and kind of kill the benefit of it, except for the flavor, of course. So not usually more than 109 degrees on the honey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 cup of water, warm water, not hot water, but warm water. We're going to pour it in our bowl here with the yeast. We're going to start to wake them up. You don't want to kill the yeast. Too warm of water will kill the yeast, and too cool of water will not wake them up and get them going. Now, the sugar is the food for the yeast. So we're going to go, and I just kind of eyeball this. I know baking is precise measurements, but I love honey. A little extra honey isn't bad. So we're going to go about 2 tablespoons. 1, and actually the crystals are starting to bind it up in there. I need to warm it up some more. Okay, about 2. I'm going to give that a quick stir. these guys woken up and happy and feeding. Now what I'm going to do also is I'm going to add, so the recipe calls for 2 cups of liquid, 1 cup of water and 1 cup of milk. I'm going to specifically use almond milk. I find it's got a fantastic flavor, and usually try to not eat too much dairy in this house. So this has been warmed up. We're going to add that. There's our almond milk. I'll give that a quick stir. Okay, now comes the flour. So the recipe calls for between 5.5 and 6.5 cups of flour. The nice thing with bread is you don't have to be perfectly precise the first time around. You can always add to it when it's kneading and to get the proper consistency for baking. So we're going to go ahead and add 3 cups. So we're going to fall in between there. It's not half of 5.5, it's not half of 6.5, it's half of 6. So I found this to be the best ratio. We're going to want to measure this precisely. Just a regular table knife works really well with that, with a straight back. Alright. Let's mix this up. Like I said, a sponge is going to be about the consistency of a pancake batter. So if it looks a little dry, you maybe added a little too much flour, maybe a little bit less liquid. Maybe add the flour slower, because the recipe works perfectly for 2 loaves of bread with 2 cups of liquid, the milk and the water. I'm just using a spatula here. Works very, very well. Just kind of smash it through. You don't want to over mix this. It will grow, and the yeast will do the work without too much work on your part. You don't want to make this particular bread too tough. That's kind of hard to do in this stage, but you know, just keep in mind, just be cautious and careful, and it'll come out perfect. Alright, what I'm going to do now is let it sit, let it work, cover it up with a dry towel, leave it in a warm place. You know, room temperature is fine. For, like I said, between 1 and 4 hours. You can, in some of the other pre-ferments, let it do its job out here for about an hour and then put it in the refrigerator. What that's going to do is it's going to slow down the process of what the yeast is doing in there, and it's going to develop more flavor. For this one, we want to make it this evening. So, like I said, through my experimentation, between 1 and 4 hours at room temperature is good. You can keep it up for up to probably, I think it's, 12 to 24 hours in the refrigerator, letting it very slowly do its work. But this is going to be a fantastic bread. Okay, everyone. What do we have here? It's been almost 4 hours, actually 3.5. And this is what your sponge will look like. It has grown a lot, and it's ready to have the other ingredients added to it, and then we're going to knead it with our KitchenAid stand mixer right here, which for me is the easiest way. I'm not going to put the rest of the ingredients directly on top of the sponge. I am going to mix them in a separate bowl. The reason I'm doing that is that you want to be very careful when you add the salt. Salt can kill the yeast, and we don't want that if we want our bread to rise. So we're going to measure out the rest of our flour to come to the total 6 cups for the recipe. Well, 5.5 to 6 cups. You're going to I'm going to put the rest of it in here for 6 cups, and I'm going to slowly add it to see. I'm going to slowly add it when we're kneading, and if it needs a little bit less or a little bit more, I can determine that while I'm kneading. The recipe calls for a tablespoon of salt, you don't want to do this over your recipe, and I'm not going to measure this precisely. The salt adds a lot of flavoring, so a little bit extra is alright. I'm going to whisk that in to the flour to incorporate it through there, so it's not highly concentrated in one spot, so it doesn't kill that yeast. And then I'm going to take the rest of our yeast add it and combine it. Little spatula works really nice for this. We're going to kind of break down the bubbles in our sponge here. We're going to add about half of the flour to the top. I'm going to scrape down the sides. And we're going to put this on our stand mixer. You want to use a dough hook for your stand mixer. Lock it down and let it start kneading. Oh, would help if I plugged it in. Right, you want to check the dough to see if it's the correct consistency, and what that means is it sticking to the sides? Is it really gummy? This one still sticking to my fingers, so it needs more flour. What we want to happen is it needs to be tacky, but it doesn't need to stick to your fingers like that or anything else, and it needs to snap back into place when you pull out a piece of it. Slowly, but snap back into place. So this one still needs some more flour. That consistency is looking good. What you want to do is you want to knead this for between 8 and 10 minutes. At this point, we've been going for about 6. So I'm going to let it go for a little bit more to build up that gluten inside of the dough. Alright, it's been 10 minutes. This is looking very nice. Like I said, it's not sticking to my fingers, and it's snapping back into place. I'm going to take it off the hook here. Remove the hook. What we're going to do is take it out of the bowl, form a ball. Now the nice thing about bread is that it doesn't have to be perfect with the amounts. Unlike cakes, souffles, etc., etc., you have to be very, very precise. Bread, you can add a little extra flour, a little less, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little cooking spray. We're going to coat the inside so this doesn't completely stick to it. Coat the inside of the bowl. We're going to form a ball here with the dough. Drop it right back inside. And time to wait again. We're going to let this rise for roughly about an hour until it about doubles in size. And then we're on to the next step. Alright everyone, it's been a little over an hour. We let our dough rise. A lot. It's more than doubled in size. What we're going to do now is a little bit of flour down on our countertop. And we're going to turn it out and punch it down. You don't want to go too crazy with this. You don't want to, you want to let this rest and relax a little bit. This is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Just punch it down with your fingers really gently like this. What we're going to do is we're going to divide this in two. And so now we want to be careful about that development of the gluten. So we're going to take a pair of kitchen shears. Instead of trying to rip it apart, we're going to just gently cut it directly in half. turn these into and make these into balls themselves. We're going to let those rest for 10 minutes. Alright, now what we're going to do is take our round discs here of dough, this beautiful, beautiful dough, and we're going to punch it down again, and we're going to fold it. We're going to start to make the loaf like this. So, some people like a little bit denser bread. You can do that or accomplish that by folding it numerous times. I personally like it to rise a little bit more, be a little bit more light and fluffy. And that's what that sponge, creating that sponge helps do as well. It helps create a lot of air pockets within the bread. So we want to get a nice long skinny piece like this, perfect for our bread pan. We're going to coat our pan. A little olive oil cooking spray. We're going to punch down the other one here. You're looking for a nice smooth tightness on the loaf. What you want to do is you want to fold it down 1/3 and then fold up the other third to meet it. And then you want to pinch the ends too. You don't want these ends or the loaf itself popping apart. So it might take you a minute or two because there's a lot of flour on the counter here. It might take you a minute or two to get these stuck together. That's alright, just keep pinching it together until it sticks on itself. We're going to cook this pan. Lay our bread in there. And you guessed it. Now, the next part. We're going to cover our bread again. And we're going to let it rise for between 30 and 45 minutes this time. Alright everyone, as you can see, our bread has risen in the pans. It's just cresting the top of the pan here, which is what you want. I've cut some slits in the top of the bread to give it room to expand in the oven. We've got a preheated oven at 350 degrees. We're going to put the bread in there for between 30 and 35 minutes. Our particular oven takes 30 minutes. And stay tuned for the final product. Alright, the timer's gone off. Let's see what we have. We also have our roasted cauliflower in the oven right now. Ooh, beautiful. What I'm going to do with these is turn them out of the pan right away. They should fall right out since we sprayed the pan. Beautiful golden brown color on the bottom and all around. Let them cool off for maybe 45 minutes or so. Depends on how warm your house is. But that's some gorgeous homemade bread right there. As a quick note, these are probably the best kitchen knives / best knives in general I have ever owned. These are Cutco. I have had this knife or this set of knives since 1997 or 6. It's been so long I can't remember. About 20 years. I've never once had to sharpen them. They are razor sharp to this day. I use them almost every single solitary day. Spend the little bit extra to get these. Get a set of these. They will last you a lifetime, and you will not ever regret it.